a mail-order bride for his Montana heart.
Written by Etta Foster and published by Starfall Publications. Book from Historical Western Romance series. Save more with our ebook and audiobook bundles on our website starfallpublicationsbooks.com. Subscribe for more audiobooks. Enjoy.
Chapter 1. Anna Stevens leaned back against the hard bench of the stagecoach and tried not to groan, her body protesting at the inactivity. It seemed to her that the driver did his best to allow the vehicle to hit every large bump or hole in the dirt road. One of the wheels also squeaked horribly, which was grating on her nerves. She wasn't used to sitting so still and for so long. She was glad that this was her last day traveling. She should arrive in Ragford, Montana by late afternoon, and she made an instant promise to herself that she would never travel in this way again if she could help it. She had been traveling by stagecoach for almost a week, and she had grown very tired of it by the second day. Her first day was spent crammed inside with 4 other people, an older man and his wife, and 2 businessmen. There was hardly any room to even move her legs, and she could have sworn that one of the businessmen did his best to touch her leg every time the stagecoach rode over a bump. On the second day, she traveled with a young woman who had a young boy. The child cried most of the day, even though his mother had done everything she could think of to comfort him. Anna knew that she should have taken the train from the town she had grown up in Kansas, but she had chosen to travel on the stagecoach to save money. It had cost less than half the amount to ride the stagecoach as it would have if she had taken the train. Her heart clenched as she thought about her family she had left behind. She had grown up on a dirt-poor farm, raised with an older sister, Emma, and a younger brother, William. Her father worked from sunup to sundown trying to keep the farm going. She had spent most of her time helping her father on the farm, while Emma had mostly worked with their mother in the house and in the garden until she had moved to Ragford and had married a successful rancher. William, at 11 years of age, was now getting old enough and big enough to be of some help to their father. She hoped that her leaving wasn't going to cause too much hardship on her father. At least, she had been able to give her parents the money she'd saved by riding the stagecoach instead of the train before she left. She hoped that it would make a difference to them, at least for a while. The stagecoach ran over another large bump in the road, and the movement threw her almost into the lap of the other passenger, an older, heavy-set woman. For this last leg of her journey, there were only 2 of them inside the stagecoach. "I'm so sorry," Anna said as she moved her body back to her side of the bench. The woman waved a hand in the air. "It's not your fault." She looked at Anna carefully, a twinkle in her eyes. "We might as well get acquainted while we travel. I've found that talking with the people I travel with makes the time go by faster. What is your name?" "Anna Stevens," she replied after a brief hesitation. She wasn't sure she wanted to converse with this woman. She was so tired and weary, but she also wondered if the woman had made a good point. She had hardly talked to any of the other passengers she'd traveled with over the last week. Maybe talking would help pass the time and get her mind off what was waiting for her in Ragford. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Anna Stevens. I'm Mrs. Lucy Clark." Anna smiled at the woman. "It's nice to meet you, too. Are you heading to Ragford?" Mrs. Clark shook her head. "No, I still have another day before I get to the town I'm going to, Wolf River." "Do you live there?" "No, I'm from Billings. I'm going to Wolf River with the plan to spend the rest of summer there. My daughter and her family live there, and I am looking forward to finally getting to know my grandchildren." "That sounds nice," Anna replied with a smile. "My husband Peter went on to glory last fall, and I'm finding that I have quite a bit of time on my hands since he passed on. I was greatly relieved when Catherine invited me to stay with them for a few months." "I'm sure that you will enjoy your time with your family," Anna said sincerely. "Now, tell me where you are going," Mrs. Clark invited her, moving the subject from herself. "Ragford will be my last stop. My sister Emma married a rancher who lives nearby about a year ago." "So, you are traveling to visit family too," Mrs. Clark said with a nod. "I'm also going to get married," Anna said, not sure why she gave Mrs. Clark that information. Most likely, it was because she was feeling very nervous the closer she got to Ragford. Mrs. Clark's face lit up in pleasure. "Oh, how nice. I'm sure that your young man is very anxious for your arrival." Anna shrugged. "I've actually not met him yet." Mrs. Clark settled herself more comfortably against the wooden seat and looked at Anna with interest. "Now, I hear a nice story in your voice. Why would you travel to marry a man that you haven't yet met?" "I'm what you could call a mail-order bride." "I've never heard of such a thing before." "My sister was also a mail-order bride. She came to Ragford to marry Logan. After they married, she encouraged both Kent and me to write to each other, with the idea that we would eventually get married. Kent is good friends with Logan, so Emma knows him very well. We've written for about 6 months, and Kent finally asked me to travel to Ragford to marry him about a month ago. He sent me some money for travel, and here I am." "I do hope that you know what you are getting yourself in for," Mrs. Clark said with concern. "Why, my Peter courted me for a full 2 years before he even asked me for my hand, although granted, he lived in a different city than I did. It was difficult to see each other as often as we would have liked, but my father insisted that we get to know each other as much as we could before we married. I never regretted that decision." Mrs. Clark's words made Anna feel even more nervous. What if Kent turned out to be someone he wasn't? She had been taking Emma's word that he would be a good husband for her, but then she remembered the reason why she had agreed to write Kent in the first place. "Weren't there any young men that you could have married where you lived?" Mrs. Clark asked. "There was an older man who has been trying to court me since last summer," Anna told her. She couldn't help but shudder at the thought of Mr. Monson. "He moved to town and took a job at the bank. He is a widower with 3 young children. He did pursue me heavily, although I'm not sure why he chose me, since he is quite a bit older than me, in his mid-30s. There were a few other women in town who were closer to his age, who would have been a much better choice for him." "I can see why you weren't interested in marrying him," Mrs. Clark nodded. "I'm guessing that you are close to 19 years of age?" Anna nodded, not bothering to tell her that she was really 20 years old, having just had a birthday last month. "I think he was looking for someone to be a mother to his children," Emma confessed. "Most likely he was. I'm sure it is very difficult for a man to take care of such young children on his own. He also scared me. He was a very controlling man. Once he had decided that he wanted me to take his late wife's place, he did everything he could to convince me to marry him. He even asked my father if he could court me. He gave his permission, so Mr. Monson seemed to think that I would agree because of my father's blessing." She shuddered again, remembering the many conversations she'd had with her parents. Once her father knew that Anna had no desire to marry Mr. Monson. He did tell her that he wasn't going to insist that she do so, but her mother had pushed the issue many times. Anna knew that her mother didn't understand why Anna wouldn't want to marry a wealthy man such as Mr. Monson, especially since he had a good job and would be able to easily provide for her. Anna wouldn't have to always worry about money as her mother had needed to her entire life. But Anna felt that there needed to be a better reason to marry someone than because of money. She had always thought that she would marry for love. She would meet her dream man, they would fall deeply in love, and ride off into the sunset together like what was depicted in the fairy tales she had read when she was young. But as she grew older and she observed the marriage of her parents and others around her, she knew that life didn't always turn out the way she'd imagined it to be when she was a young girl. "Tell me about Kent," Mrs. Clark invited her. "There must have been something about him to get you to agree to travel so far to marry him." Anna smiled for the first time as she thought about her fiancé. Kent is the sheriff of Ragford. He has held that job for a few years. As I said, he is good friends with my sister and her husband, Logan. In the letters I've received from him, he's described the town quite well. He seems to be an interesting man. Mrs. Clark gave a sigh. "I do wish you well, Anna, in your marriage. I know that we don't know each other very well, but may I give you some advice?" Anna nodded. "Of course. Always keep God in your life and in your marriage. Doing this will help you through the good times and the bad. Never have secrets between you." Anna nodded. She had seen evidence of that with her own parents. They lived a hard life, but she knew that they loved each other and always made an effort to attend church in town. Prayer was also a large part of her life. "My last advice that I can give you is to never go to sleep angry at each other." Mrs. Clark laughed and looked off into the distance, as if reminiscing on her own marriage. "I can't think of how many times Peter and I would be up late, talking about a problem or concern we had, but forcing ourselves to talk things out actually brought us closer together." "That's good advice," Anna admitted. "I'm actually pretty nervous to meet Kent for the first time, even though I am so weary of traveling." She had already decided that she would do whatever she could to have a good marriage with Kent. She only hoped that he felt the same. They did have the added issue that they hadn't yet met, but Emma and Logan's marriage had started out the exact same way. Anna had been able to tell by Emma's frequent letters that they had become very close and eventually grew to love each other. This thought greatly comforted her. She was sure that Kent wouldn't have asked her to marry him if he wasn't willing to do what it would take to make it work. Mrs. Clark's hand reached out and squeezed hers in comfort. "I pray that your marriage will become as good as mine was with Peter. It will take a lot of work, but it will be worth it in the end." Chapter 2. Kent Wilcox looked up as one of the 3 deputies his town employed walked into the office. He had sent Jamie to take care of a brawl at the only saloon Ragford had only 30 minutes ago. Jamie's quick return told Kent that there hadn't been any problems. "How did it go?" Kent asked him. Jamie grinned at him. "The moment I showed my face, the fight instantly stopped. I did inform the 2 men that if they started a fight again inside the saloon, they would be spending some time in our fine accommodations for a day or 2. He gestured towards the 4 jail cells that were located down the hall. Kent laughed. "I'm glad that you didn't need to do anything else." He pulled his pocket watch out of his pocket and glanced at the time. He kept this watch with him all the time, and it was the only item that he brought with him from his old life, a gift from his grandfather. "Do you want me to go with you to meet the stagecoach?" Jamie asked. Kent nodded. noting from the time that they would need to leave soon. "How much longer are we going to have to do this?" Jamie questioned, a slight frown on his face. "Until any threat of stagecoach attacks on the way to Ragford is eliminated," Kent said determinedly. "Let's leave in about 30 minutes. I'd like to let my wife know I most likely won't be home for dinner then." "Go ahead," Kent said, giving his permission for Jamie to take a break. Jamie lived in the only boarding house Ragford had, and Kent knew he would be back in plenty of time. After Jamie left, Kent leaned back in his chair. He knew that all three of his deputies felt that he was being too cautious, insisting that they meet every stagecoach that was heading into Ragford. For the last 2 months, there had been many reports from nearby towns of a group of outlaws attacking the stagecoaches. These men were mostly looking for money and other valuables, but they weren't afraid to kill people who got in their way in order to get what they were looking for. In Kent's mind, they were extremely dangerous, and they were very smart. They had somehow eluded other sheriffs in the surrounding towns and were always able to get away with the loot. They used to only attack stagecoaches in areas where they had good places to hide in the Montana Territory, in nearby forests and areas that had dense trees and shrubbery. But they were becoming bolder. In the last few weeks, in almost every attack Kent had heard about, at least one person had been killed. A few weeks ago, Kent decided that it would be best to ride out and meet the stagecoaches when they were a few miles from town. Some of the sheriffs in other towns were also doing this, and it seemed to have at least slowed down the attacks. Even though the outlaws had become bolder, they didn't want to be recognized and tied to the attacks. Kent was hoping that when the outlaws discovered that he was meeting every stagecoach, they'd give up trying to attack, at least in his area, so that they wouldn't be recognized. But Kent had another reason why he wanted to make sure the stagecoaches arrived safely to his town. It was personal. His future bride, Anna Stevens, was traveling on one of them. He had been writing Anna for about 6 months and felt like he had gotten to know her as much as he could through letters. She seemed like a nice, down-to-earth woman. His good friend Logan and his new wife Emma also vouched for Anna, mainly because the two women were sisters. He wanted to start a family, and this seemed a good way for that to happen. Besides, Emma had also been a mail-order bride to Logan, and things had ended up working very well for them. Logan had originally married Emma, so his young daughter, Mary Jane, could have a mother. But Kent knew that they had also learned to love each other. He was aware that not all marriages had the love or respect that they should have. His parents' marriage was a good example of that. Both of them had married for prestige and social status, and Kent was determined that his marriage with Anna was going to be different. He knew that love wasn't going to be part of their marriage, at least in the beginning, but he hoped it would eventually be part of it. If it wasn't, at least there could be deep respect between them. Once he had decided to bring Anna to Ragford so that they could marry, he had sent her some money for traveling. He had expected her to travel by train the way her sister had. She would have only had to switch trains once, and it was a much safer way to travel. But instead, he had received a letter about a week ago from Anna, informing him that she was traveling by stagecoach. From what he could tell from the date she'd given, she should be arriving in Ragford in 2 days. He was very worried that she was traveling by stagecoach, and he couldn't figure out why she had chosen to do so. For one thing, traveling by stagecoach would take almost twice as long as it would have if she had traveled by train. But He was also concerned because of the attacks that had been happening on the stagecoaches. All he could do was to pray for her safe arrival and do everything he could to keep things safe on his end and as the sheriff of Ragford. To get his mind off the arrival of his future bride, he forced his attention to a stack of wanted posters that he kept on the corner of his desk. He began to look through them carefully, doing his best to memorize each outlaw's face. If he did ever run across any of these men, he would be able to recognize them and arrest them immediately. Jamie soon arrived. "We can go whenever you are ready." Kent nodded and stood. "We might as well go now, even though it is a bit early." The two men left the sheriff's office and untied their horses that they kept under a nearby tree, saddled and ready to ride at a moment's notice. Once they were on their way, Jamie began to chat. "So, are you excited for Anna to come?" Jamie asked curiously. Kent gave a silent groan. He wished that he hadn't told his deputies about Anna, but he had because he wanted them to watch out for her. His other two deputies, Declan and Owen, had taken the information with a shrug of their shoulders. But for some reason, Jamie was fascinated by the fact that Kent had been writing Anna and had asked her to marry him without even meeting her. "I'll be glad when she is in Ragford safely," Kent responded. "I have to admit, I'm trying to figure out why you want to marry a woman you've never met before. There are other fine young women in Ragford who need husbands. Take Miss Pamela Henderson, for example." Kent thought about Miss Pamela, who now owned a large ranch that was located next to Logan's since her father had died last fall. He was aware that she was struggling to keep things running after her father's death the summer before, and he wondered how long it would be before she finally decided to sell the ranch. "Miss Henderson is a good woman and would make a fine wife, but not for me," Kent commented. He had his reasons why he'd chosen Anna, one being that Miss Henderson had just lost her father and now had the burden of running a large ranch. Kent wasn't interested in taking on that responsibility, so he didn't feel it would be fair to try to get to know Miss Henderson better. But he wasn't about to tell Jamie that. "Are you planning on getting married as soon as Anna arrives?" Jamie questioned with a quick glance at Kent. "Yep," Kent replied. "What about—" Kent interrupted him, wanting to put a stop to Jamie's constant questions. He pointed to a cluster of hills that eventually led into the mountains. "Why don't you ride over there? Keep an eye out for anything suspicious. Those trees would be perfect hiding places for outlaws since the stagecoach rides close by them." "Sure thing, Sheriff," Jamie agreed with a nod. He kicked his horse into a run and headed in that direction. Kent sighed as Jamie moved away, but he also couldn't help but chuckle. He knew that his marriage wasn't like most normal relationships started, but he felt good about his decision to marry Anna. He only hoped that she wouldn't take one look at Ragford and change her mind. He had been living in Ragford for about 5 years now, and he loved every inch of it. Having grown up in a large city in Pennsylvania, he enjoyed the qualities that small towns had. He liked how everyone knew everyone else, and he was glad Ragford only had one saloon instead of several. He loved his job as sheriff and planned to make it his work for as long as he could physically perform his duties. He had grown up in a very prestigious family. His ancestors had come over on the Mayflower, and an intense pride in that fact had been passed down through each generation, including himself. He liked the idea of being from a family who first arrived in this great country. But he didn't like how some of his family felt that they were entitled because of it, and that they were better than those around them who didn't have as much money as they did. His father owned a large shipping company and had expected Kent, as his oldest and only son, to eventually take over the operation of it. Kent had his own ideas of how he wanted to live his life. He had done his best to get his parents to understand that he wanted more out of his life, especially when he'd become an adult. He had always wanted to live in a small town, ever since he learned about the Western movement, where many people chose to move west for a new life. He read many books and newspaper articles, anything he could get his hands on about life in the West. When he was about 12 years old, he knew what he wanted to be, a sheriff of a small Western town. This, of course, infuriated his father. "You are a Wilcox, and with that, you have a responsibility to fulfill your duties. Being a sheriff of a hick town isn't one of them." He remembered his father saying with scorn when Kent first confided to his father about his dreams. He had kept his thoughts to himself after that conversation, but his desire had never gone away. When he finished college, his father had begun to put a lot of pressure on him to take over running the family business. Instead, Kent had answered a newspaper ad to be a deputy in Ragford. He had left in the middle of the night in order to keep his father from stopping him. A few years later, when the sheriff had retired, Kent had taken over his job. He never regretted his choice of leaving his family business behind, but in the process, he had essentially been disowned from his family by his father. "If you leave and take that deputy job, you are never welcome in our home again. You will be no son of mine." His father had raged at him when Kent had first hinted to him of his plans. "You will not receive your inheritance, and I will do whatever I can to stop you." Kent knew that his father had said those words to try to sway him to not give up all the money he would receive at his father's death, including some money that had been set aside for him by his grandfather. But the words had had the opposite effect on him. He hadn't cared about the money. In fact, it was one of the reasons why he had chosen to move to Ragford. He had never liked how money seemed to rule all the decisions his parents had ever made. They only associated with those who were as well off as they were. Even his younger sister, Helen, wouldn't have any choice as to whom she married. Their parents had already had someone in mind for her when she was only 10 years old. Helen was now in her early 20s, and he often wondered if she was now married to the man they'd chosen for her. He had tried to stay in contact with her right after he arrived in Ragford. Helen had eagerly answered his letters, but then they had stopped coming, and he knew that his father had put a stop to their communication. He didn't have any regrets about how he had handled the problems with his family, but he did wish he knew how Helen was doing. Forcing his thoughts away from the family that he would never see again, he touched his shirt pocket, feeling the crinkling of paper. It was the last letter Anna had sent him. He had begun the habit of keeping her latest letter with him all the time. He rarely pulled it out to be read again, but he used it as a reminder of his desire for a family in this life that he had chosen. He also knew that he was a bit worried that she would take one look at him or at Ragford and return to Kansas. Another woman had done that very thing, a woman that he didn't ever want to think about again. As Kent rode, he could see a puff of dust in the distance and knew that the stagecoach was heading his way. He slowed his horse down and pulled out his pocket watch again, frowning at it. The stagecoach was arriving early. Urging his horse into a fast trot, he began to ride to meet the vehicle. Suddenly, he heard 2 loud gunshots, and he groaned. Those shots were a sign that the outlaws were attacking. He also heard a woman screaming. Kent's heart began to beat quickly in his chest. He galloped as fast as he could along the uneven dirt road. He hoped that he would be able to get to the stagecoach before anyone was killed. He hoped that the gunshots were just a warning. He could see Jamie riding towards the stagecoach a few paces ahead of him along the hills. Kent also hoped that this time they would be able to make some arrests to stop these needless attacks. Chapter 3. "Tell me about your grandchildren," Anna said as she did her best to stifle a yawn. Mrs. Clark eagerly began to talk about them. Catherine just had her 4th child only a month ago, a little boy. Her other children are girls, so she was thrilled that they finally have a boy. Not that they didn't want the girls, mind you, but a man always wants a son to carry on his name. Anna opened her mouth to respond when she suddenly realized that the stagecoach had begun to move much faster. "Hold on tight," she heard the driver yell in a panicked voice. "What's going on?" Anna asked as fear crept through her. "Oh no," Mrs. Clark said as she clutched the side of the stagecoach. "I was hoping that this wouldn't happen." "What?" Anna asked again as she grabbed hold of what she could, which ended up being part of Mrs. Clark's skirts. "I believe that we are being attacked by outlaws," Mrs. Clark yelled as the stagecoach leapt forward again. "Get down." "Oh, what?" Anna asked a third time, not processing what Mrs. Clark was trying to tell her. She was very confused as to what was going on. Did Mrs. Clark actually say that there were outlaws attacking them? She looked out of the small window and gasped at what she saw. There was a man dressed in black clothing. He had a red bandana over his mouth, as if he was trying to conceal who he was. She actually made eye contact with him for a split second, and what she saw in his eyes terrified her. The man held his gun in the air and pulled the trigger as he gave a loud shout. "Get down on the floor," Mrs. Clark ordered as she pulled Anna down with her. There was very little space for both of them, but she figured it was the safest place to be at the moment. A few seconds later, Anna heard another gunshot. She was starting to realize that she was in great danger. Was she going to end up hurt or even dead? Just when she had that thought, she heard one of the 4 horses who were pulling the stagecoach neigh loudly in fright. She felt the unpleasant sensation of weightlessness as the stagecoach slowly began to tip over, although at first she wasn't sure what was happening. All the air left her lungs, like 2 hands were squeezing every last breath out of them. Her head screamed in pain as it hit the side of the stagecoach. Then suddenly, all went black. She didn't know how long she had been unconscious. She didn't think it had been very long because she could hear the voices of men talking amongst themselves. She opened her eyes just a little bit and realized that she was no longer in the stagecoach, but lying on the dirt. How had she gotten there? She saw a man bending over an open trunk near her, which had been cracked down its side. She quickly shut her eyes and instinctively knew that she needed to pretend that she wasn't alert. She couldn't let these men know that she could hear them. "Over here, Jed," the man shouted. "I think there is some jewelry in this trunk." Anna heard hard footsteps on the ground as they came closer to her. She felt more than saw the man pause in front of her, and it was all she could do to keep her breathing regular. "Here's the bag, Tip," Jed said in a deep, harsh voice. "Put everything you can find in it, and hurry." "Sure thing," Tip replied. "There's not much in here, though, from what I can tell, just some costume jewelry." Anna could hear disappointment and frustration in his voice. Anna heard him rustle through the trunk. It wasn't her own, so she figured they were going through Mrs. Clark's things. She could only hope that the older woman didn't have much in the way of valuables. She knew that, if they opened her own trunk, they also wouldn't find anything of value. Once they knew that the jewelry was all they would be able to find, she hoped that they'd leave, and then she could figure out what she should do next. She wondered what had happened to the driver and to Mrs. Clark. "Hurry up," Anna heard another man yell some distance away. "That crazy sheriff and his deputy are coming this way." Anna felt intense relief when she heard that help was on its way, crazy sheriff or not. "Let's get out of here," Jed demanded in his harsh voice. "Let me go through this trunk first. There might be other things in it." "We also haven't gone through the other trunk yet," Tip argued. "Give me the bag." "We don't have time," the third man said. "The sheriff will be here any second." "He's still far enough away," Tip continued to argue. "I'm leaving," the third man shouted. "You guys can stay and keep looking if you're dumb enough to." Anna could hear a horse leave, and she guessed the man was heading towards the mountains. She opened her eyes just a bit and saw one of the men also mount his horse. "You better get going." It was Jed, talking in his harsh voice. Tip waved a hand as he walked towards Anna's trunk, which had fallen off the stagecoach and was on its side, the bag clutched in his dirty hands. "Go on, I'll be right behind you." Anna closed her eyes again and waited for Tip to leave. Instead, she heard him try to open her trunk. He cursed when he realized that it was locked. "Stop and put your hands in the air," Anna heard another man's voice shout, although he sounded far away from the scene. The man cursed again. Another gunshot went off as Tip mounted his horse and took off after his friends. When she was sure all three men were far enough away from her, she tried to sit up. That was when she saw the bag that the man had been holding. It was a small leather bag, and it looked like it was bulging with items inside. Tip must have dropped it when the sheriff yelled at him. Instinctively, she crawled towards it and picked it up. She looked around for a good place to hide it. She didn't want the three outlaws to come back looking for it. She saw that her carpet bag was lying close to her. The men had dumped all of her belongings out of it, although she knew that all they had found was 2 books, what was left of her most recent lunch, a few coins, and the letters from Kent that she had bundled together with a hair ribbon. She tried to stand so she could pick up the bag, but pain shot up through her right ankle and she collapsed in the dirt, doing her best not to cry out. Again, she crawled the few feet to her carpet bag. When she was close enough, she picked it up and stuffed the leather bag that the men had left behind into it. A few seconds later, a man appeared in front of her. Her heart began to beat heavily until she saw that this man was the sheriff, judging by the shiny star badge that he wore on his shirt. "Are you okay, miss?" the sheriff asked with concern. Anna tried to nod, but her head was beginning to throb. "I think so." Another man arrived. "Go check the driver, Jamie," the sheriff ordered. Jamie nodded before getting off his horse. He walked towards the front of the damaged stagecoach. "Were there any other passengers?" the sheriff asked Anna. "Yes, an older woman named Mrs. Clark. We were both in the stagecoach when it tipped over. I guess I got thrown out of it. I don't know what happened to her." Jamie returned a few seconds later, a solemn expression on his face. "I'm afraid the driver didn't make it." "I was afraid of that," the sheriff murmured as he walked over to the stagecoach. "Mrs. Clark?" the sheriff called as he pounded on the side of the stagecoach. There wasn't an answer. Anna watched as he tried to open the door, but it was bent shut. She wondered how that had happened, since she assumed it had been opened when she was thrown from it.
Before we continue into the story, do us a favor. Like this video and hit the subscribe button because it helps very much with YouTube's algorithm. If you want the audiobooks ads free, visit our website and select our bundles to save more. Thank you again. Now back to our story.
It took the sheriff a few long seconds to get the door open, and she watched anxiously, wanting to know if Mrs. Clark was okay. When he finally was able to get it open, he looked inside. Anna noted that he looked strangely shaken when he finally turned around. She knew without him saying anything that Mrs. Clark was also dead. "Where were you heading?" the sheriff asked her kindly. "Ragford," Anna responded as she blinked back tears from her eyes. Now wasn't the time to fall apart, although she felt an intense grief because of Mrs. Clark's death. The older woman had been so excited about her visit with her daughter and grandchildren. She had only known the woman for a short while, but she knew that the advice she'd given her would be forever engraved in her mind. "It looks like you need to see a doctor. I'll take you into Ragford," the sheriff offered. It was then when Anna realized that this man who had just rescued her was Kent Wilcox, the man she was to marry. She tried to get a better look at him, but the sun was just behind him, and it hurt her eyes to look. She groaned again. Kent reached down and gently picked her up. He carefully placed her on his horse. "Can you give me my carpet bag?" Anna asked, pointing to the flowered bag that had been at her side. Kent nodded and picked it up. "It feels quite heavy. They must not have gotten away with everything." Anna wanted to tell him that she had hidden their money bag inside it, but as she sat on the horse, she suddenly became very nauseous. It was all she could do to keep her lunch down. Kent must have noticed that she didn't feel well. He turned to his deputy. "I'm going to take this young lady into town. You keep an eye on things. I'll return with some help as soon as I can." "What about the horses?" Jamie asked as he pointed. Anna looked in that direction and saw that 2 of the 4 horses were standing some distance away. She wondered what had happened to the other 2, since 4 of them had been pulling the stagecoach. She could see a large gash in the side of one of them. "Do what you need to do," the sheriff ordered with a shake of his head. Once Kent got his horse moving in the direction of Ragford, Anna tried not to sigh in relief. She was so glad that Kent and his deputy had arrived so quickly after the accident. She didn't want to think about what could have happened to her if they hadn't. Neither of them said anything for the short trip into town. It was all she could do to keep her head from bobbing against him. She was sure that he didn't know who she was, and she didn't want to inform him right then. She'd had great plans for their first meeting, and getting injured and feeling nauseous hadn't been in her plans. She would see what the doctor said about her head and ankle. Then she would get cleaned up before she presented herself to Kent as his future bride. As she clutched the carpet bag to her side, she could feel the lumpy leather bag she'd hidden inside. She would tell him about the bag of money after she told him who she was. She was greatly relieved when they finally arrived. Kent took her directly to the doctor's office. "Oh, good. Dr. Gill is in his office," Kent murmured. He slid off his horse and then helped her down. "Do you think that you can walk?" Kent asked her with concern. Anna nodded slowly. Yes. She kept a firm grip on her bag as Kent led her into the doctor's office. Every step she took made some pain shoot up her right leg, but she didn't want Kent to carry her again. For some reason, the thought made her heart flutter. "Dr. Gill," Kent called as they stepped inside, "I have a patient for you." Kent helped her sit down in a chair as footsteps came towards them. She felt so dizzy, and she shut her eyes as she leaned back in her chair. "What do we have here?" the doctor asked in a jovial voice. Anna kept her eyes shut. There was another stagecoach attack. This young lady was hurt in it. She has a head injury and also hurt her ankle. Dr. Gill turned his attention to her. You look like you need to lie down. I'm very dizzy, Anna murmured. Will it be okay if I leave her here with you? Kent asked. I need to get back to the stagecoach. That will be fine, Dr. Gill agreed with a nod. My wife isn't here at the moment, but she will return shortly. She can help if I need her. Anna expected Kent to immediately leave, but instead he waited until Anna was lying on a bed. Once she was comfortable, he gave her an unreadable look before tipping his hat at her and leaving the doctor's office. I'll be very careful, but I do need to look at your head and ankle, Dr. Gill said. Anna could only nod her head, and even that action hurt. I'm very tired. Go ahead and sleep, the doctor said kindly. That's probably what you need more than anything right now. It was as if all she needed was permission to relax. She drifted off to sleep as she felt a cold cloth touch her forehead. Chapter 4. Kent felt very concerned for the young lady as he left the doctor's office. He was glad that he had been able to get her safely into town. He had been very worried that she was going to slide right out of the saddle during the last few minutes of the ride. He said a short prayer that she would have a full recovery. He went to his office and asked Owen to come and help. Then, once again, he urged his horse towards the awful scene of the stagecoach accident, Owen right behind him. Kent wished he had arrived sooner. Even though the stagecoach had been early, if he had, he would have been able to stop the attack from happening. Then the driver and the other passenger would still be alive. He was sure that Jamie would need to shoot at least 2 of the horses because of severe injuries. What a waste of good horse flesh. Over the next few hours, Kent kept very busy as he made arrangements for the 2 bodies to be taken into town. The owner of the stagecoach station sent some of his men to try to fix the vehicle enough to get it into town. He also agreed to take responsibility for the driver and Mrs. Clark's bodies and make sure that their families were notified. As Kent had suspected, 2 of the 4 horses needed to be put down because of broken legs as well as other severe injuries. The other 2 horses would most likely recover. It took all afternoon to take care of everything. He was able to figure out that the trunk that had its belongings all over the ground belonged to Mrs. Clark. The other one, which was securely locked, belonged to the young lady. He was glad that at least her trunk hadn't been damaged. He wondered who she was. In all the confusion, he hadn't even asked for her name. Although now that he thought about it, she seemed to know who he was. He sent Jamie into town with the horses and asked him to find some other horses to pull the stagecoach. I guess that's about it, Kent finally said, when the stagecoach was pushed upright and began to be pulled towards town. What are you going to do next? Jamie asked. I want to find out how the young lady is doing, and then I'm going to see if I can't find the men. Maybe you should talk to her and find out what she remembers. She might be able to tell you something that might help in your search, Jamie suggested. Kent nodded, having already come to that conclusion. I'll come with you if you need a partner to look for them, Jamie offered. Thanks. I think I will take you up on your offer, Kent agreed. He knew it wouldn't be smart to go after 3 dangerous outlaws by himself. When he finally arrived back in town, he went directly to the doctor's office. Mrs. Gill let him in with a welcoming smile. I'm here to see how your patient is doing, Kent said as he stepped inside, his sheriff's hat clutched in his hands. She is doing much better, Mrs. Gill responded with a nod towards the kitchen. She just finished eating dinner. Would you like some stew? I made plenty. Kent hesitated before nodding, even as his stomach growled in anticipation. Mrs. Gill's stew was some of the best he'd ever tasted, although that seemed to be all that she ever made. "That would be nice, thank you." "Come along then," Mrs. Gill said, as she led him into the kitchen. Kent saw the young woman sitting at the table. She did look much better. She wasn't as pale, and she smiled at him when he entered. "Hello," he greeted her. "I hear that you are doing better." "I am," she responded. "I want to thank you for your help." "Just sit down, Sheriff Wilcox. I'll have a bowl of stew for you in a jiffy." Kent took a chair next to the young lady. "I'm afraid that I don't know your name. We never introduced ourselves with everything that happened." Her face flushed prettily. "I know who you are. You are Kent Wilcox." He grinned at her. "Well, now you have me at a disadvantage." She took a deep breath. "I'm Anna Stevens." Kent's eyes widened at her name, and it took him a second to realize that his fiancée was sitting next to him. It never occurred to him that the young lady he helped was who he'd agreed to marry. "I'm sorry that I didn't know who you were," Kent said, trying not to stutter. "I didn't think that you were coming for a few more days." She held her hand out, and he gently grasped it, mindful of a few bruises that he could see on her tanned skin. "It's nice to meet you." "Likewise," Kent said. "I'm sorry that it had to be in these circumstances." Anna withdrew her hand and picked up her glass of water and took a sip. "It's not your fault, of course." Kent didn't know what to say and was glad when Mrs. Gill walked over to him. She placed a full bowl of stew in front of him, along with a plate of thick slices of bread. "Thank you, Mrs. Gill. This looks real good," he said. He bowed his head and said a short prayer in his head before taking a bite of the stew. He glanced at Mrs. Gill, wondering if he should ask his questions when they were alone. Would it be wise to let her know what was going on? Anna seemed to read his mind. "The doctor and Mrs. Gill already know who I am and that I came to marry you," she said gently. Kent nodded. "Good to know." He took a bite of bread. "I know that we had agreed to marry as soon as you arrived. Are you up to that?" Anna hesitated. "Would it be all right if we waited a few days, just until my ankle and head are feeling better? I would like to at least be able to stand without pain before we marry." "Of course," Kent agreed, feeling a bit relieved that she had requested some time. It would give him time to go and look for those outlaws. "Dr. Gill sent a message to the Nelsons," Mrs. Gill broke in. "Anna would probably be more comfortable if she stayed with her sister." "Yes," Anna agreed. "Besides, I am so eager to see Emma again. It's been so long. I've missed her desperately." "I think that is a fine idea to stay with them," Kent said. Anna began to stand. "I'll let you finish your meal." Kent held out a hand. "Wait, I have some questions about what happened, if you are up to answering them." Anna sat down again. "Of course. What do you want to know? Can you tell me what happened?" While he finished his meal, Anna told him in great detail about what happened. She was even able to tell him 2 of the outlaws' names, Jed and Tip. He was aware that most outlaws went by names that were nothing like the names their parents gave them. She was able to give a brief description, although he knew it wouldn't help much because their faces were mostly covered. He was glad that she had the presence of mind to pretend to not be awake as they went through Mrs. Clark's trunk. He knew that if they had known she was aware of what was going on, they wouldn't have thought twice about shooting her. "I think that's all," Anna finally concluded. "What you have told me will help a lot," Kent said. "I'm going to go after them." Anna looked concerned. "Are you sure that's wise?" Kent felt a bit frustrated. Did she really think that he'd just sit around and wait for them to strike again? She needed to realize up front that this was his job. "I'll be careful." Anna didn't say anything for a long moment. "I'll pray for your safety," Anna finally said. "I feel so bad about Mrs. Clark's family. She was traveling to go and visit her daughter." "Do you know what town she was heading to?" Kent asked. Anna nodded. "Wolf River." She hesitated. "I would like to write a letter to her family. Can you make sure they get it when they find out what happened to her?" Kent's heart softened at her words. "Of course." Kent finished the last bite of some cake that Mrs. Gill had given him. He put on his hat and stood. "I'll do my best to keep you apprised of when I'll return." Anna nodded. Kent could tell that she still was having a hard time with the idea of him going after these dangerous men. After thanking Mrs. Gill for the meal, he left the house, but not before he glanced one last time at his future wife. She didn't look very much like her sister. Emma had auburn hair and green eyes. Anna had blonde, almost white hair and blue eyes. She looked very tired, but he also found her to be very beautiful. He went to his own house, located behind the sheriff's office. It was a tiny one-room house. For the first time, he realized that bringing a wife into this house was probably not the best thing to do. He'd had his eye on another house that was for sale just a block away. It was quite a bit larger, with 3 bedrooms, its own kitchen and dining area, and a living room. There was even a small room off the living room that could be used as an office. He'd hesitated to purchase it before Anna arrived, still afraid that something was going to happen to make the marriage not take place. But now he knew that he needed to take the steps required to provide a nice home for Anna, something he should have done weeks ago. When he returned, he would look into purchasing that house. He changed his clothes and then filled up a saddlebag with supplies. He had enough food to last him a few days. He was determined to bring the men who were causing all of these problems to justice. When he was loading the last of his supplies on a fresh horse, Jamie rode up. "I'm ready to go when you are. I just have a few more things to pack and then we can leave." "Were you able to talk to the young lady about what happened?" Kent nodded. "I'll tell you what she told me on the way. She was a great help." He hesitated, wondering if he should tell Jamie who Anna really was. Shouldn't he have known that she was his mail-order bride when he first met her? As he thought about it, Anna had described herself very thoroughly in her letters. He should have recognized her by her description of pale, almost white hair and sky-blue eyes. He also had been expecting her over the coming few days. "What is it?" Jamie asked, as if knowing that he had something to share. He gave a sigh. He might as well admit the truth. "That young lady just happens to be my mail-order bride." Chapter 5. When Emma finally arrived in Ragford to pick up Anna, she was exhausted. She almost wished she had agreed to spend the night with the doctor and his wife, but she perked up a bit when she saw her dear sister for the first time in over a year. "Oh, Anna," Emma murmured with sympathy. "I'm so glad that you are okay." Anna suddenly felt very emotional, and she couldn't keep the tears from falling. It was so nice to be in her sister's arms once again. They held each other for a long time until Anna heard booted footsteps coming into the room. Only then did she pull away. A very good-looking man walked over to them and touched Emma's shoulder as if making sure she was okay. "Oh, Logan, this is my sister, Anna," Emma said. Anna noticed that her sister also wiped tears from her eyes. "It's nice to meet you," Logan replied. "I've heard quite a bit about you." Emma smiled. "I've let him read some of our letters. I hope that was okay." Anna had mixed feelings about that, but she decided to address that another time. "It's nice to meet you, too." "Are you ready to leave?" Emma asked. "I'm sure that you are exhausted from traveling and then your ordeal." Anna nodded. "I'm ready to go when you are." The ride to Emma's ranch seemed very long to her, although she remembered that her sister had told her once in a letter that it took less than an hour to get there from Ragford. They had brought a buggy into town, and it was much more comfortable than the hard seats the stagecoach had. She kept falling asleep in her seat and tried to stay alert while Emma pointed out various ranches, farms, and other points of interest along the way. When they finally arrived, it was all Anna could do to make her way into Emma's home. "Why don't I take you to the room you'll be using?" Emma suggested. "You should feel better after a good nap." Anna was too tired to respond. She just let Emma lead her up some wooden steps and into a small room. She allowed Emma to help her out of her dusty dress and into a clean nightgown. After Emma left her alone, she curled up on the bed and began to cry. She sobbed for a long time, trying to stay quiet. She couldn't help it. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Mrs. Clark so still and pale. She kept hearing the gunshots ringing in her ears. She saw herself lying in the dirt, trying to stay still so that the outlaws wouldn't suspect that she was awake. She felt the edge of her bed move, and she rolled over. She saw Emma sitting next to her. "Everything will be okay," Emma murmured to her as she took her hand. She used her handkerchief to wipe her face. Anna desperately wanted to respond, but she was so tired. Instead, she closed her eyes, suddenly feeling comforted that her sister was near. "It is nice to be with Emma again," she thought, as she drifted off to sleep. When she again opened her eyes, she squinted as the bright sunlight shone through the open curtains of a window. For a moment, she wondered where she was when she didn't recognize her surroundings, before she remembered that she was in Emma's home. All of the events of the stagecoach attack flooded her mind, and she pushed them away. She didn't want to think about what had happened right then. She slowly sat up and was glad that she didn't feel any dizziness. She carefully moved her right ankle and was relieved to feel little pain. "You're awake." Anna turned towards the voice and smiled when she saw a young girl standing at the open doorway. She looked to be about 4 years old. "Hello," she greeted the girl, assuming that this was Mary Jane, Emma's new daughter. "You sure slept a long time," Mary Jane commented. "I did," Anna asked. "Mary Jane," Emma said as she appeared next to the girl, "I hope that you didn't wake your Aunt Anna up." Anna got up from the bed. "I was awake." "Oh, good," Emma said, pleased. "I'm sure you are hungry. I have breakfast ready for you in the kitchen." "Breakfast?" Anna questioned. "How long did I sleep?" "You fell asleep right after you arrived yesterday. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning." Anna didn't say anything for a moment. "I must have been very tired if I slept all night. I'll be down for breakfast in a few minutes." "Great," Emma said as she took Mary Jane's hand. "Let's let Anna have some time to herself." "But I wanted to show her my book," Mary Jane protested as she held up a leather journal, very similar to what Emma had always carried around with her when they were growing up. "You can show her as soon as she is dressed." Once the door shut behind them, Anna quickly changed out of her nightgown and into a clean dress that had been draped across a chair. She assumed it was one of Emma's since she didn't recognize it. She slipped it on and then brushed her long blonde hair before braiding it and letting it hang down her back. She walked down the stairs and easily found the kitchen. There was a plate with scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast on it. A cup of coffee sat near it. I'm sorry that I slept for so long, Anna said. It is so good to see you again. I've missed you. As have I, Emma said warmly, as she sat down in a chair next to her. And it's perfectly understandable that you slept for so long after the ordeal you've been through. Over the next few minutes, Anna ate every bite on her plate and accepted another cup of coffee. When she was finally full, she noticed Mary Jane standing nearby, bouncing a bit on her toes in anticipation. I see that you have something to show me, Anna said to her. Mary Jane's face lit up, and she handed the leather book she held to her. Anna spent a few minutes carefully looking at each page. The book was full of drawings that the girl had created. Some of the pages had simple words on them. When she turned the last page, Emma took the book and handed it back to the girl. Your book is very nice, Anna praised her. I can tell that you are going to be a great artist someday. Mary Jane grinned at her, pleased with her words. Now, Mary Jane, I want to talk to Anna, Emma said. I need you to either sit quietly and draw another picture, or you can go outside and play. Mary Jane scrunched up her eyes as if she was deeply thinking about her choices. I'll go swing. That's a fine idea. Just remember not to leave the grassy yard. I won't, Ma, Mary Jane said before she skipped out of the house. Mary Jane seems like a delightful child, Anna said. She is, Emma said with pride. I love her very much. She turned her attention to Anna. Now, tell me about our family. How is everyone doing? About the same, Anna said. Pa works too hard and Ma complains too much. William is a delight, though. Sounds like things haven't changed much, Emma said with a laugh. Are you looking forward to becoming a married woman? Anna wanted to immediately nod in the affirmative, but she hesitated. Emma picked up on it. Is something wrong? She asked with concern. I am just worried about being married to a sheriff, especially after what happened. I am starting to see that he has a dangerous job. While it was awful that your stagecoach got attacked, those types of things hardly ever happen anymore around here. Kent has told Logan and me what is going on, and he seems to have a handle on things. But those outlaws seem to be shooting at everything that moved. What if Kent had gotten shot, and now he is going after them? I'm very worried. Emma touched her hand. I can promise you that you can't find a better man than Kent. Besides my Logan, of course. She laughed. He is smart, and I'm sure he will be careful and not take unnecessary risks. But something could happen to him. I'm not sure I want to become a widow so soon after we marry. Emma didn't say anything for a moment. I think this is where faith comes in, Anna. Do you feel good about marrying Kent deep in your heart? Anna thought about her question for a moment. I did when I received his first letter. I definitely didn't want to marry Mr. Monson. There aren't any guarantees in life. Something could happen to Logan while he works on this ranch. I wrote to you about the bear that almost attacked us. Mary Jane and I could have been killed. Anna remembered when she had read about what had happened last summer. A dangerous bear had been prowling around Logan's ranch and the surrounding area. It had been shot by another man, but it didn't kill him, only made him more dangerous. Emma had gone for a picnic with Mary Jane one day, and the bear surprised them. Luckily, Logan had been able to kill the bear before anything else had happened. I firmly believe that God watches out for us and protects us if it's not our time to go. You need to have faith that God will protect Kent while he does his job as a sheriff. I think I know what you are saying, Anna said as she slowly nodded. Ma talked about this quite a bit while we grew up, remember? Yes, Anna nodded, remembering many conversations with her mother when she'd heard of bad things that had happened to others around them. I did feel good about my decision to travel to Ragford. I've enjoyed writing to Kent and getting to know him. I gave my word to him, and I will marry him as soon as he returns. Emma stood and pulled Anna to her feet. I am so glad that you are here, Anna. I'm also very grateful that you were protected in the stagecoach attack. They gave each other hugs for a long moment, and Anna felt her fear vanish. It was so good to be with her sister again. Emma's words had always comforted her. She had missed that so much. She was so glad that she was going to be living close to her again. Chapter 6. Kent decided to ride to the 4 surrounding towns and talk to each of their sheriffs. He knew that the more help he could get, the faster he could find the outlaws, and the sooner he could get married to Anna. Just the thought of her made his heart clench. He hadn't even known her for 24 hours, and she was already an important part of his life. He didn't want her to come up with a reason to put off their wedding. He wanted to be able to reassure Anna that Ragford was perfectly safe for her to live in. He also didn't like that innocent people were being killed or injured because of the greed of a few selfish men. For the life of him, he never could understand why some people did what they did for money. It was like they punished others because some people had money, but they didn't. It was very ironic to him. He had left his family behind because of money. Now there were bad guys who killed others for the same thing. Even though Anna hadn't expressed any concerns about living in Ragford, he wouldn't blame her if she was worried about it. He was glad that she was with her sister. He knew that Emma had been looking forward to Anna's arrival for several weeks. At least he knew that Anna was on her sister's ranch and was safe. They could spend some much-needed time together. He sent Jamie to scout out the mountains around the main road the stagecoach used while he rode into the next town, Wolf River. He met with the sheriff there, Mr. Tyler Hart. He was also very concerned about stagecoach attacks and was willing to do anything he could to help. The lady who was killed in the last attack, Mrs. Clark, was on her way to this town, Tyler said with regret. Her daughter lives here. Her name is Myrna Grant. You can't imagine how hard it was to make that visit and tell Myrna that her mother was killed. I can imagine, actually, Kent admitted. It was one of the jobs that he hated, telling people in his town when a loved one had died. Tyler continued, I'll send a few of my deputies to Stark Creek and Flat Springs. I'm sure that their sheriffs will want to be in on this. Good. I'll send one of my other deputies to Ravenwood. I think that if we can get as much help as we can from all the sheriffs in this area, it will be easier to find and arrest these outlaws. I agree, Tyler nodded. I've also looked through the wanted posters that I've received the last few months. I think I may know who the men are. The other lady who traveled with Mrs. Clark was able to see one of the men for a few seconds. Even though they had bandanas on their faces, she was able to describe one of them. He had a scar that ran under the bandana from his cheek to the side of his right eye. One of the posters had a man who has a scar like she described. Good to know. Tyler nodded. What is his name? The wanted poster said his name is Jedediah Wilson. Miss Stevens also heard 2 names, Jed and Tip, Kent added. This time Tyler shrugged. You know as well as anyone that these outlaws use other names than their real ones around crime scenes. Yeah, but it's something to keep in mind, Kent stood. I think I'll head back to Ragford and send my deputy to the towns we agreed on. Are you familiar with the large cluster of trees along the stagecoach line between Ragford and Wolf River? There is also a huge gray rock beside them. Tyler nodded. Let's meet there this afternoon, maybe around 4 o'clock or so. Hopefully, the other sheriffs can also meet there. Sounds good, Tyler agreed. He also stood, and the two men shook hands. See you then. Kent tipped his hat and left the office. He swung onto his horse and rode off towards town. After he arrived, he sent one of his other deputies, Owen, to Ravenwood. While he waited for them to return, he drew a rough map of what he could remember of the area the stagecoach used. He made note of all the areas where the other sheriffs and any deputies that joined them could hide. When Owen returned with the news that Ravenwood Sheriff was willing to meet Kent at the designated spot, he mounted his horse and rode out of town to join Jamie. His mind began to ponder all of the options he could think of to capture the outlaws as soon as possible. 30 minutes later, Kent began to carefully look over the entire area with Jamie. He could see many good areas where he and the other men could hide and keep an eye out at the same time. He and Jamie threw many options around, and by the time the men began to arrive, he felt good about his ideas. When everyone had gathered together at the appointed time, Kent counted 10 men, including himself, 5 sheriffs and 5 deputies. What do you have in mind to put a stop to this? The sheriff of Flat Springs, James Moss, asked, a calculating look in his eyes. This road gets most of the traffic with the stagecoaches. My deputy and I have walked around this entire area. There are many places where we can hide. This forested area, those rocks over there, that valley. I think that's what we should do. Each of us finds a hideout a few hours a day when the stagecoach comes through, Kent explained. I don't know if I can take time every day to sit around in hideouts waiting for outlaws. Joshua Brooks, the sheriff of Stark Creek, said, I've got other problems in town that I need to take care of. Kent wanted to roll his eyes. Can't you get your deputies to take care of things while you are gone? I think it is very important that we find these men as soon as we can. Stark Creek can only afford to hire 1 deputy, Joshua answered with a shake of his head. Kent looked at the other sheriffs. What about you men? I can help for this week at least, Roy Wilson said. He was the sheriff of Ravenwood. The other men nodded their agreement to also help. Tyler spoke up. I got a message from Billings this afternoon, just before I left to come out here. A small leather bag with money and gold in it has gone missing. It was stolen a few weeks ago from a well-to-do rancher who lives just outside of Billings. The owner really wants it back and has offered a substantial reward. And I think we can safely assume that the outlaws have this bag. He named an amount that made Kent's eyebrows raise. This man must be doing well to be able to offer that much. He could live comfortably for a year on that amount. We can keep an eye out for it, Kent replied with a nod, doing his best to keep his thoughts to himself. I didn't see anything like that cleaning up the stagecoach accident. Most likely the outlaws still have it or they've hidden it somewhere. I think that we should look around these mountains. There are a few caves around. Maybe the outlaws are hiding out in one of them, James Moss said. There are more than a few of them, and they are located deep in the mountains, Tyler replied. They would be good places to hide. Kent shook his head. It would take too long to search out all of the caves. I think that would be a waste of time. The men spent a few minutes arguing over what they should do, create a stakeout and flush the outlaws out or search the mountains for them. Kent did his best to hide his frustration. This was something he had a hard time doing. working with other men in serious cases like the stagecoach attacks. Everyone had a different opinion, and nothing ever seemed to get done when arguing began over who was right. "Let's take a vote," Tyler suggested, having to yell over the men's voices. "Both ideas are good ones. Who thinks we should stage the stakeouts?" Kent, Tyler, and 2 other sheriffs raised their hands or gave a firm nod. "Who thinks that we should search the mountains for the outlaws?" James was the only one who raised his hand. James lowered it when he realized that he was the only one who wanted to look in the caves. He glared at the other men but didn't say anything. "Then we should stage the stakeouts like Kent has suggested," Tyler said. Kent did his best to ignore James. If James decided that he didn't want to help, then he wouldn't be too upset, although they really needed all the men that they could get. He didn't want to work with someone who was against what he wanted to do. He spoke up. "We can try my idea for a few days and see if we see anything. If nothing happens, we can move on to the cave idea." He felt relieved that his idea was going to be tried first. Tyler looked at Kent. "Since you are the one who got us all together and have scouted out this area, tell us where you want us." Kent pulled out his makeshift map and began to point out each hideout that he felt would work. He assigned each man to one of them, doing his best to keep the men as close to their own towns as they could be. He could only hope that they would need to do this for a few days. He knew outlaws well enough that they didn't stay hidden very long. The thirst for gold and valuables was too strong. The stagecoach moves through this area about mid-afternoon each day, except Sundays. If everyone can be in their hideout spots about an hour before it comes through this area, I think that should be enough time. Sometimes the stagecoach is late, so stay in your places until about half an hour after it passes. Of course, we don't want the outlaws to figure out what we are doing, so everyone be careful. Don't let them see you coming or going. They aren't afraid to kill. A few minutes later, after going over the plans one more time, the men dispersed after agreeing to meet the next day. After everyone left, Kent stayed behind with Jamie. "Do you think this is going to work?" Jamie asked. "It has to," Kent said with a slight shake of his head. "It has to." He felt like his entire future rode on what would happen over the next few days. Chapter 7. A few days after Emma had come to collect her from Ragford, Anna leaned against a wooden fence, watching her sister's husband, Logan, as he patiently taught Mary Jane how to ride a horse. Emma stood a few feet away, calling out encouraging words. She had expected Kent to come and see her before now, and she wondered what was keeping him. She knew that he wanted to go after the outlaws who had attacked her stagecoach, and she could only hope that nothing awful had happened. But if something had, wouldn't they have received word? Her headache was gone, and she no longer walked with a limp from her ankle injury, although she felt twinges of pain every so often. She was glad that she didn't have any residual effects from her ordeal. She did have nightmares at night, though. In her dreams, when the stagecoach tipped over, she was the one who was left inside. She couldn't move, and everyone thought that she was dead. She kept trying to tell Kent that she was alive, but he couldn't hear her. Then Emma was there, sobbing into her hands. She always woke up at that point. She didn't understand what her dreams were trying to tell her, but she had gone through a very traumatic event. "She's doing very well," Emma broke into her thoughts. "Yes, she seems to be a natural," Anna agreed. She loved the ranch Emma lived on. She had fallen in love with it the moment she saw it. It was like the house and land were tucked against the mountains, which seemed to act as protection to those who lived in their shadows. Everything was green and lush. There was enough grass and water for the cattle. She enjoyed getting to know Daisy, a young Indian woman who lived nearby. She did the cooking for Logan's ranch hands. Her husband, John, was Logan's foreman. They had a little boy who was just beginning to walk. "Do you want to ride?" Emma asked her. "We have plenty of horses to choose from." Anna hesitated before shaking her head. "I'm not sure it would be wise to get on the back of a horse until my ankle is completely better." Emma nodded. "Tell me about our family. I'm getting some letters from Ma, but I don't think she's telling me everything that is happening." "Things aren't good," Anna confessed reluctantly. "We've never totally recovered from that drought we had a few years ago. And you know Pa. He won't even think about changing how he does things. I had some ideas on how he could plant seed more efficiently, but he wouldn't even listen. I do feel guilty for leaving, though." "I know that Pa relied on your help quite a bit," Emma answered. "Part of me wonders if I should have stayed so I could keep helping Pa, at least through the rest of summer." Emma reached out and covered Anna's hand with her own. "Don't think that, Anna. If you had stayed, you would have ended up married to Mr. Monson." Anna nodded. "Ma really wanted me to marry him. She seemed to think that since he made a lot of money, all my needs would be met, and that was what's important." "It's not," Emma shook her head. "I felt bad too when I left. I wished I could have helped more. Logan told me I could send them some money after we renewed our vows, but Ma refused any help." Anna shook her head. She suddenly remembered the bag of money she had hidden deep in her trunk. That money would do a lot in helping her parents. "I have an idea." Emma turned to her, eyes sparkling. "Let's go into town tomorrow. You need a wedding dress. I think we can find some beautiful fabric. If we work fast, we can make you a dress." Anna laughed. That sounds like a great idea. And she could see if Kent was around. She really wanted to see him again. "I did bring a dress that will be fine for a wedding, though." Emma rolled her eyes. "And I'm sure it will be adequate. But you need something special." "Do you think that we have enough time to make a dress?" "I can ask my friend Pamela to come and help. She owns the ranch next to us. I'm sure between the three of us, we can have a simple dress made that will still be beautiful." "I would love to have a new dress for the wedding," Anna admitted. "I did bring 2 dresses with me. I was going to wear the best one, but a new dress sounds wonderful. I'll ask Daisy if she would be willing to watch Mary Jane tomorrow," Emma said. "We can eat lunch there." Anna smiled at her sister, even though she felt a little guilty that she left her parents with so much work. She was glad that she was now in Montana. She looked forward to starting a new life with Kent, and she was glad to be living close to Emma. She looked forward to getting to know Logan better and Emma's new daughter. The next day, Emma took her into Ragford. She found that she was anxious to go into town, and the thought of seeing Kent again made her feel a bit flustered. She wasn't sure what she should say to him when she saw him again. Emma stopped the buggy in front of the general store. When they went inside, Anna noticed that it seemed quite a bit the same as the store in her hometown, except that it was almost twice as large. "Good morning, ladies." A heavy-set woman greeted them. "How can I help you?" "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson," Emma said pleasantly and gestured to Anna. "This is my sister, Anna Stevens. Anna, this is Agnes Johnson. She and her husband Joe own this store." "It's nice to meet you, ma'am," Anna said warmly with a smile. Agnes narrowed her eyes at her. "You are the young lady who the sheriff is marrying," she said without returning her greeting. Anna nodded, not sure how to take this woman who seemed almost suspicious of her. Emma immediately put an arm around her. "I'm so thrilled that she is marrying Kent. I'll have my sister nearby." Agnes sniffed and opened her mouth to say something, but Emma interrupted her. "We would like to look at your fabric for a wedding dress for Anna." Anna expected Agnes to immediately take them to see the fabric, but instead she stared at Anna for a long moment. When Anna wondered if she was going to refuse to help them, she finally waved a hand. "You know where the fabric is," Agnes finally responded, and then she looked down at the counter where she had been writing something on a sheet of paper. Emma smiled kindly at her, but Anna could tell she was a bit perturbed. She followed her sister to the back of the store. "Is there a problem?" Anna asked quietly as her eyes darted to Agnes, who stood behind the counter, who was now almost glaring at them. Emma shook her head and gave Anna a look they used to share as children, which said, "I'll tell you later." Anna nodded, letting her sister know she received the message, and began to look through the fabric. She was pleasantly surprised at the type of fabric the store had. Most of it was fabric that was serviceable, to be worn for everyday use, but she was able to quickly find some fabric that would be perfect for a wedding dress. She didn't want a dress that was too fancy, for she wanted to be able to wear it after the ceremony to church, or when she needed a nice dress to wear to some other event. But she also didn't want to pick out fabric that wasn't pretty. She finally picked out a lightweight fabric that was light pink with small white flowers. Emma talked her into purchasing some lace that looked handmade that could be sewn on the collar and the sleeves, as well as pearl buttons for the back of the dress. Agnes rang up her purchases without speaking, and Anna still wasn't sure how to take the woman, but she also wasn't going to worry about her. After they paid for their purchases, Anna asked Emma if they could stop at the sheriff's office. "Of course," Emma agreed with a knowing smile, "although I doubt that he's back yet. He would have come out to the ranch if he was." "I'd still like to check," Anna said. It took only a few minutes to find out that Emma was right. There was a man sitting in the office who didn't look much older than she was, whom she assumed was one of Kent's deputies. When Anna asked after Kent, the man shook his head. "He's not back yet. In fact, I haven't seen him for a few days," the deputy said. "Can I take a message for him when he returns?" Anna hesitated before shaking her head. "No, I'll come by again in a few days." "Why didn't you just tell the deputy who you were?" Emma asked after they left the sheriff's office. "Because I don't know if Kent told his deputies about me," Anna explained. "If Agnes knows, they know," Emma laughed. They ate lunch at a small restaurant that was in a hotel before deciding to head back to the ranch. Eating food that had been prepared by a chef wasn't an event that Anna had the opportunity to experience often in her life. She thoroughly enjoyed chicken sandwiches and a fresh fruit salad. They also served freshly squeezed lemonade with just the right amount of sugar added. She kept Emma busy as she asked questions about her life with Logan. She was glad that her sister was so happy. On the way back to the ranch, Emma brought up Agnes. "I guess I should have warned you about Agnes Johnson," Emma said. Anna shrugged. "There are always people who don't seem happy. My guess is that she is one of them." "You are right," Emma replied. "She's had a lot of loss in her life, but she does tend to make others around her as miserable as she is. It's almost as if she can't stand it when someone else has found happiness. She did have a great display of fabric, and I'm very happy with what I was able to find," Anna responded. "Let's talk about something else. Do you know where you will be getting married?" Anna shook her head. "We didn't talk about that on the day I arrived. My guess is that we will be getting married in the church in town. You can get married at the ranch if you'd like, but regardless of where you marry, plan on letting Logan and me do a small dinner for you." Anna nodded, but she wasn't sure how Kent was going to feel about having their marriage performed at Emma's ranch. She also remembered that in one of his letters, he'd written that he didn't want a huge fuss made of their wedding. She opened her mouth to comment, but she decided not to say anything to her sister. She would talk to Kent first, and then let Emma know what they wanted. "Is it all right if we stop off at Pamela's house?" Emma asked. "You could meet her, and we can make arrangements for her to help with your dress." Anna agreed, but she wasn't sure that a perfect stranger was going to want to spend the next few days sewing a dress for someone she didn't know. She soon found out that Pamela was as sweet and friendly as Emma had implied. When they arrived at Pamela's ranch, she came out of the house the moment Emma pulled the buggy into the yard. "I'm so glad that you came," Pamela said, joy in her voice as she ran down her porch stairs towards them. "I was going to come over in a few days for a visit." Anna watched as Emma climbed from the buggy and they hugged each other. She noticed that Pamela's sky-blue eyes lit up when she looked at her, as if she instantly knew who she was. "This is my sister Anna," Emma said. "Anna, this is my dear friend Pamela Henderson. I'm so glad that you are here and that you arrived safely," Pamela said with a kind smile. "I heard that there was an attack on the stagecoach you were in." Anna nodded. She wasn't sure she wanted to talk about it, and Pamela seemed to instinctively understand. "Why don't you come inside?" she invited the two sisters. "We'd love to," Emma accepted for both of them. A few minutes later, they were sitting at Pamela's kitchen table. Pamela began to heat up some water for tea, and Anna was content to sit back and listen to the two women talk. She could tell that they were good friends. She discovered that Pamela had been living in San Francisco, but had returned to this ranch, which was her childhood home, when she had discovered that her father was sick. He had died last fall, and Pamela was trying to decide whether she should sell the ranch and return to San Francisco or keep it running. "I love my life in California," Pamela said, as she poured each of them some tea and then took a sip of her own. "But I know that my father would have wanted me to keep the ranch." "You could hire more people to do the work," Emma suggested. "The foreman my father hired is doing a great job," Pamela said. "I hardly have to do anything, although I do wish I could do more. I'm getting bored just taking care of the house all day." She looked off into space for a long moment before shaking her head and turning her attention to Anna. "When is your wedding to Kent going to be?" "He is out looking for those outlaws who attacked the stagecoach. I haven't heard from him, but my guess is that it will happen as soon as he returns, so hopefully in a few days." "It's one of the reasons why we came by," Emma added. "We just came from town and purchased some fabric for a dress. We were wondering if you'd like to help us make one." Pamela smiled at Anna. "I would love to help. I do appreciate it, especially because you don't even know me," Anna said. "You are Emma's sister. She has told me all about you, so I feel like I already know you," Pamela said, as she reached out a hand and covered one of Anna's. "I can come by tomorrow right after breakfast. We should have the dress done in no time." Her face lit up. "In fact, I have a pattern that you might like, unless you already have a dress in mind." "I don't really," Anna admitted, shaking her head. "I'll be right back," Pamela said, as she jumped to her feet and left the room. Anna drank some of her tea and then began to eat a sweet roll that Pamela had placed on a plate in the middle of the table. "These are really good," Anna said after she took her first bite. "Pamela is a great cook," Emma agreed. When Pamela returned, Anna immediately agreed to use the pattern. They ended up staying for the afternoon, cutting out the dress using the pattern.
Scan the QR code or click on the link in the description to read the full book. The full audiobook will be available on YouTube in a few days. What did you like the most? Comment below and share this video on your social media and with your friends. Watch one of the following videos. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell to not miss any new audiobooks. Thank you for watching.